Okay, so I was walking on. Welcome back, by the way. I was walking back. I was walking to the from our marina down to the train station, to the metro station, to come into work this morning. It's really, by the way, living in D.C. is so cool. I love this town, and I mean there are some bumps in the road, apparently, from time to time, but you got to deal with all the Republicans, but it's actually, this is a great city. This is a great city. It's got a great public transportation system, and I take the metro to work every day, and I take it from here over to the TV studio, and I frequently take it home. And so anyhow, it's a nice walk. It gets me about a mile walk in altogether every day. Just going to my train station and then from there to here. So I'm walking along and I'm thinking about the arc of history. Right. In a kind of macro way, right? The last couple of centuries. And you look at what countries rose up and then changed and then fell down. And how did that happen? And it occurred to me that, if you go back to the 1400s, the really big countries were what were called the Low Countries, which was actually the area around Holland, the Benelux countries. They're called Low Countries because they're they're at sea level basically, and they got to build dikes and have windmills and things. But they manufactured stuff, and then they started trading. The Dutch trading companies in the 15th century, in the 1400s, and in the 1500s. Basically ruled the world. And they were mostly selling Dutch goods or goods that the Dutch had, they had expropriated from largely African countries, other, colonies and things. They bring the raw materials to Holland, make them into clothing, make them into materials, rare woods, all kinds of stuff. And then they sold them through the Dutch trading companies. And the Tudor king, it was Henry V, I'm quite sure, said, let's imitate this. And so he put into place what was called the Tudor Plan, which was basically tariffs on imported goods, encouraged the development of a trading company for the UK. Now, this was back in the 1500s, as I recall. And enforce manufacturing in the United Kingdom by law in the colonies that the United Kingdom controlled. For example, North America, here. It was illegal in the United States to make fine clothing. It had to be made in England. We picked cotton here. We sent the raw cotton to England. They turned it into clothing. They shipped it back to the United States. You could make homespun. You could make, cheap clothes here. But you could not make fine clothing. In fact, this was the big conundrum that George Washington faced when he was notified, when Henry Knox rode up on his horse in 1787, I guess it was. And no, it was 89. And said, you've just been elected president of the United States. And Washington said, okay, there's two things I want to do. Number one is say goodbye to my mother because she's dying, which he did, and she did. And then number two is, Henry, can you go off to Connecticut to this tailor, Daniel Hinshaw, as I recall was his name, one of the few tailors in America who had been defying the British law and making fine clothing, and get an American-made suit for me. And George Washington was sworn in a brown American-made suit. The portrait for him that hangs in the White House, he's wearing black, British black, which was made in England, but he wanted to be sworn in wearing this American-made suit. So this was the Tudor Plan, was basically keep manufacturing in your country. And, of course, Gandhi protested this, the salt things, the cotton things. The spinning wheel became the logo for Gandhi because Gandhi wanted manufacturing to happen in India. And the Americans protested this, throwing the tea in the harbor in 1773. We wanted manufacturing and the control of trade to stay here in the United States. But the strategy was, though, basically, and this is, when Adam Smith wrote Wealth of Nations in 1776, it was a groundbreaking book because basically he pointed all this out. He said, if you want to make a nation rich, make things. The example that he used in the book was that a tree branch on the ground has no intrinsic value. But if you take that tree branch and you apply human labor to it and carve it into an axe handle, it has value now, and it's value that can even be passed down from generation to generation. It's lasting value, so it becomes part of the increase in the wealth of the nation because you did manufacturing. So manufacturing is how nations get rich. So first it was the Dutch, and they got rich with manufacturing. And then they kind of got into these free trade deals with the countries around them. And then Henry V and ultimately Queen Elizabeth I in December of 1600, when she signed the charter for the British East India Company, basically ripped off the Dutch and started doing manufacturing in England and competing with the other European countries. And so for, hundreds of years, the British, the 1600s and the 1700s, the British ruled the world because they were the richest country, because they were manufacturing. They were creating wealth and then exporting their goods. And then by the late 19th, early 20th century, certainly by the end of World War I, the British had started getting into these free trade deals with the other European countries. They started lowering their tariffs and things. And British manufacturing began to diminish. And so the British moved to a service economy and a financialization economy. And Margaret Thatcher really sped that up dramatically in 1978, 79. And Britain became impoverished, essentially. I mean, there's still a lot of money in Britain. But Britain has been, the UK has been, I believe, running a trade deficit for some time. And if they're not, the financialization of their markets has become substantial. Which brings us to the United States and then China. We became a manufacturing powerhouse in the 1870s, 1880s, the period after the Civil War, as the Industrial Revolution was really taking hold. We started making steel and railroads and everything. I mean, we made everything here. And we had tariffs in place to protect our domestic manufacturers. And, we ended up with trading companies that were, and we were doing the whole colonialization thing. We were doing it in Hawaii with, the Dole basically owning owning Hawaii, and American Sugar, and American Fruit Company owning Honduras and Nicaragua and countries like that. And, we were basically replicating the European model a little less glibly and blatantly of, overseas adventurism. Bring the raw materials here and then sell a finished product. And then starting with Nixon, but really going full tilt boogie in the mid-90s with NAFTA and CAFTA and the World Trade Organization, we decided to stop manufacturing and sent our manufacturing to China. And so what happened? Well, we're a very rich nation. But the riches that we have are what are left over from when we were the world's biggest manufacturer, which pretty much stopped about 20 years ago. And now all that has gone to China. And I would predict that 30, 40 years from now, China's growing very rapidly in their wealth from manufacturing. But they're starting to outsource things now. The Chinese are starting to outsource things to Vietnam and Burma and Malaysia, other low-wage countries that are lower in wages than China, and they're going to end up screwed the same way we are. It's like everybody keeps making the same mistake by not protecting their domestic manufacturing. And you can see this through, now, as I said, I mean, this is just, I was just going through this in my head as I was walking to work this morning, but it just seems so obvious. Countries that don't make things, that are just living off the wealth that they had when they did make things, eventually run out of that money and go broke.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Which is why it's so imperative not only to stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership, SHAFTA, but to roll back CAFTA and NAFTA and all of those things. Do away with them all.